Welcome, my immortalized, to another round of the book recaps. Dung, 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 dung. Yeah, this indeed is the episode where I, Kyrin, host of the Mere Mortals podcast, but also this one, the Mere Mortals book review, go over the books that we have covered on this channel in October of 2022. I also go through the Boostagram Lounge and thank those who have supported the show and completing the feedback loop of the value for value model, which this show also is a part of. And then also give you maybe a little sneak insight, a peek into what is coming up of November of 2022. So there was 4 books that were covered in this month. Voss by Patrick White, Great Stories by Chekov, by Anton Chekov, Ernesto Sabato's About Heroes and Tombs, or On Heroes and Tombs, and then also Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, which Juan reviewed. I'm going to jump straight into my favorite of the whole bunch, which was Voss by Patrick White. I'd been meaning to read this for quite some time. It's renowned as an Australian classic. This is the only author who only Australian author who has received the Nobel Prize in Literature, I believe. So I thought it was definitely worthy of checking him out. It's been on my list for a long time, and I just didn't get around to it when I did that Australian Book Month about a year ago, I think it was. So picked this up and read it through. Normally, I'm not a fan of these kind of experimental, obscure, too much writing verbose type of books, but this one landed with me. It resonated with me. And you'll see in About Heroes and Tombs, or On Heroes and Tombs, that, that one didn't resonate with me, even though you could say it was equally experimental. So there was I've written down here, imagine dialogue stripped down to not the bare necessities, but the bare meaning. So he's trying to convey the meaning, but the bare necessities of the actual speech itself is relevant, and there's a lot of extra words and things being thrown in. It kind of feels like there's rarely a wasted word, even if the sentence is trivial. So it's this weird one where I felt it fit into place. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. This is from page 138. Dark birds mostly. It was strange that such soft things that could explode the silence, but they did, most vehemently, by their mere passage through it. Voss was jubilant as brass. Cymbals clapped drunkenly. Now he had forgotten words, but sang his jubilation in a cracked bass that would not have disgraced temples, but dedicated to God. Yes, Gott! So he was German. He had remembered. He had sung it. It rang out shatteringly like a trumpet blast. There's something about that. Voss was jubilant as brass. There's just, I like that. I like those. There was nice turns of phrases that were throughout this book. There was another one where, this is on page 171, where once again, it just called out to me. It was worthy of noting. And so I'm going to have to find the actual section here. So it starts with, Palfrey man shivered. Ah, Christ is an evil dream, he feared, and all my life I have been deceived. After the bones of the naked Christ had been drawn away through the fetid room by sheets of moonlight and out the doorway, the fully conscious witness continued to lie on his blanket, face to face with his own shortcomings and his greatest error. But there was an end to this unhappiness. He was surprised to find the moonlight returned Voss to the room. As he moved back, his bones were creaking, and his skin had erupted in greenish verdigris. Palfreyman nearly put out his hand to recall them both to their normal relationship, but was restrained by an excess of cold. I don't know. There's just something within it, and I can understand if this doesn't resonate with you, so I'll leave it at there for the moment. But yeah, I would say if you're looking for turns of phrases for portions of writing which perhaps you have not been really able to find elsewhere, like in poetry, a lot of poetry kind of goes over my head and doesn't resonate with me. I found this kind of to be a nice bridging gap between something that's kind of poetical, in the English language at least, and yet it's still somewhat understandable. Although I did receive some comments on some the videos that I put out that people were just saying, Patrick White is kind of like the most incomprehensible author out there. I would put others above him in terms of like incomprehensibility, looking at you, Martin Heidegger, and many of the philosophers. But yeah, I can understand why people would also go like, this is silly. I don't care about this book or want to read it. So I understand that. So I gave that a 7.5 out of 10. Next one I enjoyed was Great Stories by Chekov. I gave this a 6.5 out of 10. Once again, I'm not a big fan of collections of stories, but I did want to read something by Chekov because he's kind of renowned Russian author. And yeah, once again, there was nice passages, and I think if I'd been if I knew the Russian language, these probably would have been even more impactful. But I'll read out a couple of them here, which jumped out at me. So this one was on page 42. And I'm just going to have to find the actual section. It's talking about immortality. To find one's immortality in the transmutation of substances is as strange as to prophesy a brilliant future for the case after a precious violin has been broken and become useless. So yeah, there was something funny about this where it was talking about how the casing or the confusing what is actually important for the casing around it and then prophesizing like, oh wow, that's going to be amazing in the future when it's the actual substance has moved on and gone away. So I thought that was a nice a nice analogy and kind of panel for when it was related to a story, which will take a little bit too long to talk about. So on page 47 here, somewhat talking about the same immortality and things like that. So, and immortality, oh come now, you don't believe in it, but I do. Somebody in Dostoevsky or Voltaire said that apologies for my bad reciting. Yeah, reading from books is not my strong suit. You don't believe in it, but I do. Somebody in Dostoevsky or Voltaire said that if there had not been a God, men would have invented him. And I firmly believe that if there is no immortality, the great intellect of man will sooner or later invent it. Well said, observed Andrei Yemefetich, smiling with pleasure. It's a good thing you have faith. With such a belief, one may live happily, even shut up within walls. You have studied somewhere, I presume. Yeah, there was something about that idea that God would, even if there had not been a God, men would create it and kind of be looking for that immortality. And even if it's not possible, there is just something enticing and drawing about it, which will always return people to it. And I think I want to explore this more in a podcast episode with Juan or something. Just that why are people so fascinated about immortality? And we can see this through the ages, a fountain of youth, of people wanting to leave legacies and things like that. Yeah, there's quite a few things related to that topic. And then the last one, this was on page 127. And so this was talking, they were making fun of someone. So yeah, there are no deep social movements among us and never have been, the doctor declared loudly. There is no end to what the new literature has invented. It has invented intellectual workers in the country, and you may search through all our villages and find at the most some lout in a reefer jacket or a black frock coat who will make 4 mistakes in the spelling of a word of 3 letters. I love that. I laughed out. I really laughed when I heard that. 4 mistakes in the spelling of a word with 3 letters. That's brilliant. So yeah, once again, I enjoyed it, but I'm probably not going to be returning to Chekov too much because I believe he's mostly written short stories and maybe one book. So if I can get access to that book, I would maybe. But maybe Russian works are things that I'll leave for the future. And there's something about in the Boostagram Lounge that I'll talk more about Russian. So we'll leave it for there. The last book of mine that I reviewed, Sobre Héroes y Tumbas, or On Heroes and Tombs by Ernesto Sabato. I read this in the Spanish language itself, which just tends to make things a bit more difficult for me. I do enjoy it, and I have enjoyed multiple books of reading it in the Spanish, but this unfortunately was not one of them. I gave it a 4.5, and it was too experimental, and it's really weird because I'd written this down originally, so I tend to take notes on my phone as I'm reading the books for the purpose of remembering and wanting to talk about on the book reviews and on here on the book recap. And I said initially, so this was probably when I was about halfway through the book, bizarre, but it works. Unlike many others which seem strange just to be obscure, feels like there is a purpose. The Weird House of Alejandra, randomly switching to a guy of chasing blind folk, 2 pages about an explosion, and then explaining about how it happened. Yeah, it was good. I was within the novel. I was intrigued by it. I liked the storyline. I liked the hinting. I liked the framing. All of it seemed pretty good up until about halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way through. And then this is what I came away with afterwards. Started strong and intriguing, but became more vague as he played with more styles. By the end, I was deflated. All my interest in the tragedy had waned. There was ability to say a lot with nothing really being said. So why was Bruno talking about random communists and anarchists who had never been mentioned before? This seems to be a commonality across multiple books of this genre or pattern. That idea where it can start off with kind of strong initial storytelling, what you would maybe can say is a conventional storytelling, and then as the experimentation goes on, it starts to get weird. So yeah, once again, this book I liked for the passages. This was really a month of finding unique passages which stood out to me, but maybe the overall theme, the overall fullness of as a book just didn't capture me. So I'm going to try this again, translating directly into English from the Spanish. It might not work much as some of these other things might not work as well. So the Russian is probably best, understanding the Russian language and whatnot. But I'll give it a shot. So this was from page 137, and there was a run-on style with words like ectoplasma, putrefaction, and subtle emanation. So let me try and find the exact section here. Okay, here we go. So sin su soporte y solo poder. Should I try and translate this in? I'll read it out in the Spanish so you can kind of maybe hear what it sounds like, and then I'll try and translate it. Sin su soporte y solo pudiera perder el tiempo que perdura la sutil emanación que se desprendió de aquel cuerpo en el instante de la muerte, especie de ectoplasma o de gas radioactivo que irá luego sufriendo su propia atenuación. Eso que algunos consideran el fantasma del muerto, fantasma que mantiene difusamente la forma del ser que desapareció, pero haciéndose más y más inconsistente hasta disolverse en la nada final. Okay, so translating this to the English should be something like, without his support, and it could only last the time until the point of the subtle emanation that left the body in the instance of death, a species of ectoplasm or of radioactive gas that afterwards suffering I can't do it. It's way too hard. I can sometimes, that's weird. Sometimes I can actually translate relatively well from the Spanish to English, but today my brain just wants to mix between the two, or say or instead of or. Another one, there was on page 182, so not long afterwards, where it was, there's just these moments where it seems overly sentimental. Like that was a single sentence that I read out there, and it just went on and on and on. That, when it happens in English, I don't particularly enjoy. I find that to be too long. I find it to be strange. When I see it in old books, like in Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, I just go, God, this is boring. Just get to the point already. Why is this sentence taking so long? Whereas in Spanish, I tend to enjoy it. I tend to go, oh, okay, like there's a sentiment of this running on feeling, which I enjoy. So yeah, once again, the book itself, not a biggest fan of, but individual portions and small things about it, I did quite enjoy. The final one was Can't Hurt Me, and this is one that Juan reviewed of David Goggins, and he gave this a 7.5 out of 10, so right up there with Voss in terms of the rating system, assuming Juan's rating system is roughly equivalent to mine. And yeah, not the type of book I'm particularly interested in, mostly because of the author himself, and I just generally don't really read new books per se. So I'm glad Juan's here doing the channel, because these are books that you're probably never going to hear from me. Taking souls as a nice catchphrase, as something that has a ring to that. I do like that, even though I'm not a competitive person. There's something poetic about that. I do think that's cool. Talking about poetry and David Goggins, never thought I'd mention those two in the same sentence. And it just made me come away with a couple of things. So the book seemed to have this very competitive type drive, and it was weird, kind of comparing yourself to others, but doing it in a way where you're not going to, comparison is the thief of joy is a very common phrase. So when you're in this competitive mindset, such as he is does this make you more vulnerable to comparing yourself in a negative way, in an unhelpful way? Can you still be nice to people if you're in a competitive environment? Does this work in a team environment, or is it more of a selfish individual thing? Those are a couple of questions that I came out wondering from his mentality, and maybe if I'd read the book, I would understand these things, but am I gonna? Probably not. So in any case, I'm glad Juan enjoyed it and took some things away from that for himself. So that is awesome. Those are the books of October of 2022. Let's get into the Boostagram Lounge. So I had missed a couple that were sent in September because I have to record this basically before the end of the month is out. So usually I'm a couple of days before the end of the month. So we have one here from Petar, and I should explain right at the start, a Boostagram Lounge is where I read out all the Boostagrams that come in. So the way that we gain support from this show in a financial way is by asking you to send in a message on your podcasting app. So if you're listening in via the video, I do appreciate that, and you can leave comments there, and I still might even include them in here. But I really do appreciate it if you go into a newpodcastapp.com, choose one of the ones there where you have the ability to kind of add some Bitcoin onto a wallet on the app, or to have it on there. And then you can stream in amounts to us while you're listening, as showing support for the show if you really enjoy listening to these book reviews. And then it's sending in individual messages related to comments on the books, into observations, into things like this. So we'll go right into them here. So we have starting from Petar, and this was in September of 2022. 22nd of September of 2022. And he says, by taking out the rage and chaos, I think the author was attempting to remind us that we are basically in the boat as the people in the book, but with much less awareness of the situation. So this is related to the book On the Beach by Neville Shute. And that was 4,901 sats sent using the Fountain app. And it was tempting to remind us that we're basically in the same boat as the people of the book, but with much less awareness. Look, I certainly hope that's not the case, because that would be a non-fun situation to be in. What I really took from the book was the idea of how would humans actually behave when we all know we're going to die? Because I can see why not thinking about death is very useful. It's kind of depressing thought. There's so many things I want to do. There's so many loved ones that are going to pass away in my life. It's just not a particularly pleasant thing to contemplate. Inherently, it's not going to be fun unless you're thinking about people you hate dying. But even then, that's kind of weird, because you're just marinating in hatred, which is, I would say, is not a great feeling objectively either. And so this was taking out the rage and chaos. That's an interesting. I'm gonna have to think more on that, and I'll get back to you another time, Peter, related to that. So another one on the same book was from Dave Jones. He sends through 2,070 sats, and this is via Castomatic, and he says, "Don't die, Kyrin!" Exclamation mark, 4 exclamation marks. I don't intend to, Dave. Worry not. I don't plan on dying. Another one coming here through Petar on the 1st of October through the fountain again, 7,623 sats. The premise of this book is nonsense, enough said. And so that was via The Stranger by Albert Camus. Oh man, I can't tell if he's being kind of satirical here, because the book itself is related to absurdism, which is nonsense. I'm pretty sure he is. The premise of this book is nonsense, enough said. But it could also be a reflection of the book, and he really hates it. I'm not so sure. But yeah, the book is related to absurdism. I didn't find it as absurd as his general philosophy has played out to be. I get it. I get if I overlay it on top of it and analyze it through this lens of absurdism. But just me reading the book, if you'd told me this was another author, I wouldn't have come away thinking, yeah, this is really good absurdist thought, or this explains absurdism in an intriguing way, or this concept of absurdism, because I believe it was one of the first books Camus ever really read or written and is renowned for. So yeah, I particularly didn't take that away. I found it more intriguing, the relationship, I guess, between applying justice and indifference in a person who kind of lacks these. I would have said it was more a book about the justice system and what is justice rather than absurdism. But yeah, each takes out what they want to. We have one here from Unitofacc, F-A-C-C, and he says, "Great episode, mate." And this was related to the Great Stories by Chekov. Hey, thank you so much, my friend. And then finally we have Petar, and that was through Fountain. Then Petar through Fountain, 7,623 sats. Thank you for supporting Petar, very much appreciated. And this was also related to Great Stories by Chekov. And he says, how would rank Russian authors? And I assume he means how would you rank Russian authors? I would rank them as depressed. I would rank them as their books generally fit in a very small niche from what I can tell. So just over the years, what I have read, obviously Chekov book here, but quite a few of Dostoevsky. So this would be Crime and Punishment. This would be the Brothers Karamazov. This would be the Prince, or the Idiot, sorry. So those are some of the books I've read by him. I've read a few of Tolstoy's short novels, and then also his big ones. This was quite a long time ago, so this was War and Peace and Anna Karenina. I always mispronounce that, Anna Karenina. And what else have I read? There's a couple others. I think I've read some poetry by someone at some point. So, I've read the main people that get thrown out when you talk of Russian authors. I would probably Solzhenitsyn, of course, with the Gulag Archipelago. That's a very, very famous book, and the most popular book review that I've done on this channel as well, in terms of YouTube. So there you go. If you're wondering what was the most popular one, it's the book, and then also the additional notes that I did on the book, or the quotes that I took from it. So, I mean, in terms of favorites, in terms of what I've taken out from them and that I would go back and reread again, I would put definitely the Gulag Archipelago as top, number one. And then I would probably put Brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment next. War and Peace and Anna Karenina, they're just big books, man. They're just a lot to get through. And I would say in terms of learning, or in terms of wisdom per page, I found Dostoevsky to be a bit better. But Tolstoy is much more fun to read in many ways, because it's, there's joy in it. There's some laughter, at least. There's some themes not related to internal suffering, external suffering, cold, miserable suffering. It's just got some additional, and then the associated kind of transcendence that comes through suffering, which seems to be very categorizing Russian authors. That's a very common theme. But what I like about Dostoevsky is the kind of monologues that you can get. So there's the monologue of Ivan when he's talking to Alyosha or about this kind of Spanish Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisitioner who's, I think, talking to Jesus or to a person in a cell. That is just a fantastic section, and the build up to it, I think, is what makes it. Much as how when in Raskolnikov is talking to the prostitute in Crime and Punishment, that kind of monologue he has, the build up to it, and then the monologue. I just think there's something so good about those monologues, and I've found those in other books as well. Much like in Theroux's monologue in The Plague by Albert Camus, I really, really enjoyed that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Those are my favorite. I do have a desire to read some Pushkin. I believe there's a novel called Alexandra Onegin or something, or Eugene Onegin. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name, which I do want to give a try. And I know there's another section of great stories or other stories by Chekov in my local library that I could get. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure I'll bother to get that. So yes, thank you everyone. Once again, this is a Value for Value podcast. If you've enjoyed listening in, tuning, if you've gotten value from the book reviews, I just ask that you send that back. So you can do that in whatever way you want to. You can share it with a friend. You can send in through a note or give me book recommendations that you think I would read based on previous stuff. You could highlight some stuff that I've gotten wrong. You could give me additional insights or suggestions on what you would like to know about books. If you would like to know, I don't know, every reference or every link that I could think of how this is similar to other books, I could put that in. I'm open to suggestions, and I am very keen to improve the podcast as well. And then, of course, if you want to support monetarily, you could go to one of the apps that has been mentioned in here, like Cast-O-Matic, like Fountain. Breeze is another good one, and send me through some Bitcoin with a message attached, preferably, because I really enjoy interacting with you and doing these sections. So thank you, Peter, Dave, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, Mr. Mysterious Person who sent through 24 sats. Unitofacc. Much appreciated, all of you. You're helping to support this show and keeping this product rolling and rocking, and giving me the desire to keep going on. It really, really does warm my heart. So thank you a lot. Now let's go on to what's coming up for November of 2022. Well, this is going to be a kind of mystery because I actually don't really know. I have basically read through all of these books that I'd gotten from the library, and they're all due in 2 days ago. So this afternoon, in fact, I'm going to go to the library and put these in there. And I've just randomly through my list selected a whole bunch of different ones, and I'm just going to see what comes in and see what I feel like doing. I might even read like a coding book. I honestly have no idea what's coming up. I know Juan is still on his binge of kind of Ryan Holiday-esque, so it's not self-help, but it's kind of philosophy, but for the masses is how I would probably say it, because you're not reading the direct author, and sometimes this is a good thing because as we've learned from my philosophy from the past year, reading Nietzsche and Heidegger and Derek Parfit in the individual it can be a very painful process. So that's probably what is coming up for Juan's side of things. So just imagine a current author who has written something within the last 5 years is what I'm kind of imagining. And for me, I mean, honestly, is Russian, Australian, Argentinian, short stories, experimental novel, and Nobel Prize winning. I don't think there's much picking of choosing a style that I like in particular. So there we go. That's it for this book recap. Thank you very much for joining me. to the end. I really do hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and we will see you for some more books coming up in November of 2022. Peace. Kyrin out.